Daily Bible Time, Dominic Steele and Friday morning, and thank you again to those who have been following along and have prayed for our family the last few days as we have grieved the death of my mother-in-law, and I've been taking a few days personal leave to care for my wife. The funeral of Janet was yesterday. It was a good day in God's kindness. I mean, there are 6 in our family, 4 in Kat's brother's family. 6 plus 4 is 10, and 10 is the number currently allowed to attend funerals in Sydney. And so we had a good day grieving and remembering together. Today we come to 2 Samuel chapter 14. There are 3 sections to this chapter: the schemes of Joab, the schemes of David, and the schemes of Absalom. We're going to look at the schemes of Joab today, just the first section, and in fact we're going to struggle to bring any clear application for ourselves today. In the end, I think we'll see that these 3 schemes only contribute to make things in Israel worse. And as John Woodhouse says, they unintentionally prepare the way for the near destruction of the kingdom of David. Today we're just going to cover a history of what happened, and we'll draw some conclusions and applications when we come to the end of the chapter. So the story so far, well, originally we had David confronted over his sin with Bathsheba by the prophet Nathan, and David's repentance, that line from Nathan after Nathan told the parable and then said, "You are the man." And then we saw Amnon rape Tamar, and King David did not act. And then Absalom killed Amnon, and King David did not act. And so we're in a moment of stalemate. And David's army general has taken matters into his own hands with a scheme. David's army general Joab. Joab, of course, the nephew of King David. So chapter 14, verse 1. Joab, son of Zeruiah, knew that the king's heart longed for Absalom. So Joab sent someone to Tekoa and had a wise woman brought from there. He said to her, "Pretend you're in mourning, dress in mourning clothes, don't use any cosmetic lotions, act like a woman who's spent many days grieving for the dead. Then go to the king and speak these words to him." And Joab put the words in her mouth. Now, essentially what Joab is arranging to do is to present the king with a story and have the king take sides in the story, and then use the established principle to persuade the king to act differently in his own personal situation. And actually, as you read this, you think, oh, kind of that's what the prophet Nathan did in his confrontation of David over Bathsheba and Uriah. And you can, I think, reasonably speculate about the motive of Joab here, in that he's David's nephew. He cares about the fortunes of the kingdom. He could see that it's not good for the stability of the kingdom for David and the heir to the throne, Absalom, to be out of relationship. And Absalom is popular and handsome, and so in his mind the issue needs to be resolved. And but just note, this is different, quite different to the situation with the prophet Nathan. For Nathan was acting on the instruction of God, whereas Joab is inventing a scheme, is a person taking matters into his own hands. Anyway, verse 4. The woman from Tekoa went to the king. She fell with her face to the ground to pay him honour, and she said, "Help me, your majesty." The king asked her, "What's troubling you?" She said, "I'm a widow. My husband is dead. Your servant had 2 sons. They got into a fight with each other in a field. No one was there to separate them. One struck the other and killed him. Now the whole clan has risen up against your servant, and they say, 'Hand over the one who struck his brother down, so that we may put him to death for the life of his brother, whom he killed. Then we'll get rid of the heir as well.' They put out the only burning coal I have left, leaving my husband neither named nor descended on the face of the earth." Now, there are parallels with the Amnon-Absalom situation, although we would note they are not exact parallels. The king said to the woman, "Go home, I'll issue an order on your behalf." He dismisses it. Perhaps I'll review it, perhaps I'll seek another witness, perhaps I'll do... But she pushes. But 9, the woman from Tekoa said to him, "Let my lord the king pardon me and my family. Let the king and his throne be without guilt." Kind of, I've told you the truth. I've not left out any facts, which is a bit of a stretch given the whole story is fiction. If there are any errors in what I've said, let the guilt be on my family, not on you. So the king engages and does pronounce a ruling without researching further. Verse 10, the king replied, "If anyone says anything to you, bring them to me. They'll not bother you again." Now, it's a partial ruling at this stage in her favour, but it hasn't resolved things. That he's not declared her son to escape the death penalty. So 11, she said, then let the king invoke the Lord. A further plea from her. Let the king invoke the Lord his God to prevent the avenger of blood from adding to the destruction, so that my son will not be destroyed. As surely as the king lives, as surely as the Lord lives, he said, not one hair of your son's head will fall to the ground. So David declares in the woman's favour, in the favour of the son. Now, almost as an afterthought, and this is why she's there at all, the woman raises another topic. Then the woman said, let the servant speak a word to the Lord my king. Can I just go out on a limb and say something else? Speak, he replied. The woman said, why then have you devised a thing like this against the people of God? When the king says this, does he not convict himself? For the king has not brought back his banished son. Like water spilled on the ground, which cannot be recovered, so we must die. But this is not what God desires. Rather, he devises ways so that a banished person does not remain banished. Now, she hasn't dropped her pretense of being a troubled widow. But Dr. Woodhouse notes her words are super daring and carefully chosen with the help of Joab. She doesn't mention Absalom's name, but she effectively accuses the king of having an unacceptable double standard. Now, she is expressing Joab's point of view, and as Dr. Woodhouse says, we can infer that Joab saw David's continued antagonism towards Absalom as potentially damaging to Israel as the people of God, and her line, does not the king convict himself? It's not quite as dramatic as Nathan's, you are the man, but it has the same effect. Now I'm jumping down, and King David now turns things back on the woman. 18, the king said to the woman, don't keep from me the answer that I'm going to ask, the question I'm going to ask you. Let my lord the king speak, the woman said. The king asked, isn't the hand of Joab with you in all this? Did Joab put you up to this? The woman answered, as surely as you live, my lord the king, no one can turn to the right or left from anything, my lord the king says, flattery. Yes, it was your servant Joab who instructed me to do this, and who put all these words into the mouth of your servant. Your servant Joab did this to change the present situation. My lord has wisdom like that of an angel of God. He knows everything that happens in the land. Now, Dr. Woodhouse suggests, and I suspect that he's right, that Joab was the kind of man who had such confidence in his own judgment that he didn't need to conceal it. In fact, Dr. Woodhouse says Joab may well have thought that the king's realization that the woman was Joab's agent would increase the pressure on the king to do what Joab thought the king needed to do. Now, at this point, we're frustratingly out of time on Daily Bible Time. What's going to happen? What will David do? What does it teach us about God, the way he does things through Jesus? All of that is going to have to wait till next week on Daily Bible Time. Now, in the meantime, I hope you can be with us at Village Church on Sunday morning for church. I'll be watching with you along from home, from my position on annual leave, as John Kwan takes us to 2 Samuel 10. And we see God's kindness last week. We see God's kindness again this week, but this time it's God's kindness and David's kindness rejected. It'll be very interesting to work through that with John Kwan in church this Sunday. Thanks for joining us. See you Monday morning, Daily Bible Time. God bless.